All right, to continue our conversation on some of the comments made by the PDP presidential candidate, let's bring in now Clem Aguiyi, a lawyer and political analyst and columnist. And from our Lagos studio, we have Mr. Gbola Oba, a political analyst. Thank you both gentlemen for joining us on Newsnight. I'm sure you have been listening with keen attention, to what the presidential candidate of the PDP had to say in that exclusive with Arise. Let's talk about his approach to the economy. On the issue of the NNPC, let me quote Clem, I'm starting with you. He says, look, privatization is a step in the right direction. It's always what he always wanted to do. And on the issue of subsidy, he says subsidy is, it must go at some point. But of course, the other issues of cushioning the effect of the removal of subsidy have to be there. What's your take on, what he said about how he will approach the economy if he becomes president? Clem.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, because this issue of privatization has been an issue that has been contentious in Nigeria. A lot of people misunderstand when we talk about privatization. They say you're going to sell off Nigeria. But the truth of the matter is that we must have to privatize certain businesses or corporations being run by government, because government have no, in a market-driven economy, government have no business running some aspect of the businesses. For example, if NNPC, as it is today, is your father's property, and NNPC have 3 refineries, which are not producing even 1 liter of petrol, and you are spending 64 billion naira to pay worker salary, and you are using $10 billion every quarter to import petroleum, and you're spending 4 trillion on subsidy. What will you do without such a company? Will you retain such a company without privatizing it? You have to privatize it so that it can become profitable, because NNPC has remained the only oil corporation in the world that is returning 0 profit anywhere in the world. And this should not continue that way, because 80% of our budget are oil dependent on our oil and gas. And yet we are not making money from it. The other 20% are not even being very properly accounted for. So our economy has to be market driven. There is need for privatization. What the PDP presidential candidate has said, that the government have done the right thing by privatizing NNPC. They have done the right thing in the wrong way because of the opaque nature of what they are doing, the secrecy of what they are doing. Even me, I never knew who are the owners of NNPC, the new NNPC Limited, until the names were published. And the process by which those people become the owners of NNPC. And what about the stakeholders, the oil producing areas? What are they at stake? Is this new NNPC going to be in the stock market so that Nigerians like me can own a fraction of the shares, and so that this new NNPC Limited will not be run again like government remove their hand from NEPA and put their hand in PIC, and we still don't have power supply. All
right. And then bringing Gbola Oba into this conversation. Gbola Oba, Atiku was unequivocal on this issue of subsidy. In fact, it says the PDP administration had started removal of subsidy in phases. What are your thoughts?
I felt for the man when I watched it. I felt for him because he was speaking to what ordinarily is an inevitability. But in most liberal democracies, and I want you to listen very carefully, because this is not about Atiku, it is indeed about the Nigerian elite. How the Nigerian elite is failing this country big time. We have for so long sold the lie to our public that there is free meal in Freetown. But for those of us who have visited Freetown before, we know there is no free meal in Freetown and there is no free shipping in Freeport. You know what? It is going to be a hard sell for a Nigerian politician to tell that truth to the Nigerian public. But at some point, it has to be told. But the irony of it, the paradox of it, is that in the backdrop of what is happening across the world now, and in the backdrop of the institutionalized ignorance that the Nigerian middle class or the Nigerian elite powers in this society, it may not be a vote winner for Atiku. But sitting here as a Nigerian who has seen across the world how creative, value-innovating administrations use privatization to incentivize consolidation of wealth creation and consolidation of wealth within the middle class and the lower strata of society. I know it's the right thing to do. Can it be a vote winner for him, or can it be a baggage like it was for him 4 years ago? The jury is out there. I am just a political analyst, not a seer.
All right, Clem, I wonder what you think about that. The touchy issue of subsidy as a political issue rather than whether Nigerians really benefit from it or not. But let me add this, on a point that Atiku made on the economy. He says he wants to break government's monopoly and, private sector-led economy. That's what he wants to achieve and all of that. Break it down for us. In your own understanding? Yeah,
first of all, there's no way you can achieve a productive economy without it being market-driven, without the private sector playing a key role in how businesses are run. It's very, very, very critical, very, very important. And coming to the issue of subsidy, right. Of course, we would have wished that there is subsidy alleviating the sufferings of the people in some of our products. But then, the application of subsidy in Nigeria has become a total fraud, has become an inconvenience both to the government and to the people of Nigeria, that subsidy on petroleum has to go. Because most of what we're paying as subsidy are fraud. We're paying money for what we're not consuming. And if it goes, those fraud will stop. Because we cannot understand how in 2015, we are paying about 605 billion on subsidy of petroleum. And in 2022, quarter of the year, we are paying 4 trillion naira. It's pure fraud. And what these people do is that the same cargo they bring in, they take it to their collaborators in the oil sector. They stamp it for them. They take the same cargo to Port Harcourt. They stamp it for them as received. The same cargo goes back into the Benin High Sea, spends about a month or two, come back again with the same product without discharging, and then this is what is going on. The corruption is so much. Okay. The people are not benefiting from it. So it simply has to go. Okay. And again, whether it's going to be a vote winner or a vote loser, the truth has to be told to the people. There's no point lying to Nigerians about the sweetness of what these things are talking about. The important thing is that the issue of subsidy in the oil sector simply has to go. It's pure fraud.
Laying it bare. Right. Gbola Oba, touchy issues, and I mean those are difficult questions put to Atiku Abubakar today in that exclusive interview. He also talked about reducing the cost of governance. He says we introduce e-government, a lean government, and he knows, in his words, he said, I know it is not popular. So he's saying the tough things, but how tough would this be for him to sell?
To be very honest with you, I was somewhat impressed with the degree of candor with which he answered some of the questions. Sitting there, I must be very honest that if I were to be one of his handlers, I would have advised, or I would have counseled him to be a bit more gentle the way he puts the facts. But the genie is out of the bottle, and I think it's about time we subjected the other two seemingly major candidates to the same level of stricture, subject them to play the candor game. Because where Nigeria is now, we have practically ran out of options on the stretch of populism. Populism was the anchor that the incumbent government used 7 years ago to gain its birthing at the port of success. 3 years ago, it was the same populism, even when the Nigerian elite and the Nigerian public knew that the facts as they were manifesting were seemingly inconsistent with some of the promises made to us. So,
Okay.
you remember we were told there was nothing like subsidy. You remember we were told. So at this juncture, without being an Atiku supporter, as a Nigerian who wants things to work in Nigeria, I think it is inevitable and imperative at this juncture that we made our people realize that we have been sold some lies for too long, and those lies can no longer fly.
All right, Gbola Oba, thank you both gentlemen. Clem, do stay with us. Let's still bring in this. I mean, he said quite a lot in that interview. Atiku Abubakar again, he gave reasons why he chose Delta State Governor Ifeanyi Okowa as his running mate over River State Governor Nyesom Wike. He says he picked someone he could work with amicably.
First of all, this is a guy that is very brilliant, very well educated. He started political career from local government to a commissioner, from a commissioner to a senator, from a senator to a governor. So in terms of all political parameters, he really has got the experience. And experience matters quite a lot. As I announced in my statement, I am seeking for a vice president who from day one can be a president. So he is calm. He has acquired a lot of experience. He is intellectually brilliant. So these are some of the reasons why I picked him. Not that I don't miss Peter Obi, but unfortunately Peter did not consult me. We were going on and on and on. Then suddenly I heard he has announced to be in the Labour. I think he informed me 3 days after he declared for Labour. So he did not even consult me.
All right, Clem, you heard what Gbola Oba said earlier, but let's talk about the reason why Atiku says he picked Ifeanyi Okowa. According to him, what he wanted was, or what he wants, is an amicable partner as VP and a president in waiting. I recall when he made his speech, he said, I want a president in waiting, somebody who can be president from day one. Of course, being probed further, he actually said that, he did not go outside of the names, the 3 names that were presented before him to pick. What do you make of it?
Yeah, thank you once again for bringing that issue up, because people have been contending and asking questions, why Okowa, why not Wike? And I like the fact that Atiku explained that it wasn't as if he rejected Wike as his vice president, but they had to make a decision. And I liken, when people choose their running mates, I liken it to a man trying to choose a wife. You have to look for the compatibility in a woman that you want to live with, and to know whether it's a woman that you can live amicably and peacefully with and raise your children harmoniously.
Right.
And he looked at the 3 names given to him. The committee gave him 3 names, and it is within his prerogative, his discretion, to choose any of the 3. And he chose Okowa, and has given reasons why he chose him. And one particular reason that even influenced him on Okowa is not just his calmness, not just his experience, not just his the fact that he's intellectually sound, not just because he has climbed the ladder and understand the issue of governance, but because Atiku has presented himself as a unifier, somebody who wants to unify this country and bring or he understands the Southeast problem, the Igbo question. He understands that there are agitations, and some people are feeling marginalized, And the only person that comes nearer to meeting that vision of unifying the people of this country so that all Nigerians can be in the same room on the same table to talk about, to negotiate about the future of Nigeria, was Okowa, Okowa, who he chose because he's Igbo. And he repeatedly said that each time he has run for presidency, he chose an Igbo man. There was a reason for that, because he feels that this part of the country should get involved on Nigeria and not being excluded from Nigeria the way it is now. And he made also a point that the situation where you have 17 of the service chiefs or head of security agencies being lopsided in one part of section of the country is not good for the federation that we are having. And so he has chosen a vice president that meets the criteria of who we think he can work with.
Let me bring in Gbola Oba back into this conversation. What did you make of that? He's been consistent since 2007, 2020, 2019, and for the 2023 elections to go southeast. But with Atiku Abubakar revealing, I mean, we're hearing from the horse's mouth today about what played out, what transpired in Okowa emerging as his vice presidential candidate. Do you think that the PDP has moved past this, or will move past this now that Atiku has spoken about it?
I think it's about time somebody counseled him to make sure that he's very, very brief when he's answering the tricky Wike Okowa question, because in answering that question, Dr. Reuben Abati actually got him into some form of cul-de-sac, because the tangent was such that he was asked a direct question about Wike, but he almost portrayed Autumn as a liar. And Reuben Abati played him a fast one. Are you saying Autumn lied? He said, obviously, what he said was not true. He doesn't need all those controversies. He must now learn that the journalists out there also, on the one hand, they want to extract as much information out of him to give a good portraiture of his intellectual persona, but they are also in the business of getting him, to get clumsied up. And I guess he may not know. He now has a situation where he has to also be managing not only Wike, but Autumn. Not that the mischief of Autumn has not been spelled out before, but he now gives further reason to Autumn to consolidate on his mischievous machinations. I wonder why he should be going in that direction. About time. He put paid to it by just being very brief whenever he's asked that question.
All right, Gbola Oba, just to put it out there that as journalists, we do not play fast ones. We just ask the questions, and that's what Dr. Reuben Abati did when he asked that question. Well, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has been a top civil servant, prominent businessman, and philanthropist who's made a fortune from his various businesses. He's made several attempts at the presidency, and he says he's offering his credentials in 2023 as a seasoned political operator and serial entrepreneur. Credentials, he says, are the remedy for Nigeria's many ills. But his critics point to accusations of financial impropriety against him in a country where corruption is a huge challenge. Atiku, though, denies any wrongdoing and says the charges are politically motivated. Well, here he speaks about how he made his money. Let's listen, guys.
Unfortunately, the fact that you are a public officer does not stop you from engaging in business. I was telling somebody the very first day I resumed duty at Idiroko border station, I was not even married. What I realized was that one of the most lucrative business ventures then was buying a Peugeot 404, putting bench at the back and conveying passengers between Lagos and Cotonou or Ajashe, Porto Novo. And as a young officer, I worked into the SCOA in Apapa. I signed a form for hire purchase, and I took about 5 of them. And I came back to Idiroko, distributed them to drivers, and they were ferrying passengers between Lagos and Port Novo, and I was making my money. The fact that you are a public officer doesn't stop you from engaging in legitimate business.
Gbola Oba, in 30 seconds, what did you think? This has got a lot of people cracking up on social media. They say, as a taxi, you made your money. What did you think?
Perception, they say, in politics is always reality. We know that perception is not always reality, but perception in politics is a big baggage to offload. I think, like his major opponent, he has some explanations to give. My friend was actually telling me yesterday, I wonder if one could, he says, you know, Gbola, I would want to believe that this is a contestation, an electoral contestation between two thieves and a pathological liar. I don't know the thieves, and I don't know the pathological liar.
Right.
But you know what?
Clem,
but you know what?
Let's bring Clem in because we don't have time. Gbola Oba, thank you very much. Clem, what do you make of that? You know, as a public officer, there is nothing wrong with doing business. Any question of ethics here?
There's no question of ethics. So long as the business you're doing does not conflict with your official duty, there's no question of ethics. And in this 2023 election, I am not pitching for a saint or somebody who have not done any wrong to be the Nigerian leader. I'm pitching for somebody who have the capacity, the competence to be able to galvanize Nigeria, bring back the country. We lost our country. And we need somebody who have that leadership quality that can galvanize all the talents from across the country to be able to build this country back.
Clem Aguiyi, political analyst and columnist, and of course Gbola Oba, who is also a political analyst, who joined us from our Lagos studios. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being on the news.